Alright, here we go. So today we're going to review 3 different strategies on how to multiply multi-digit whole numbers. The first strategy that we're going to see from the homework on Monday is using the standard algorithm. So that's what it's called, standard algorithm. And this is probably the most common way that you'll see throughout your life in school. So we have to start with the larger number, which is 523 times 54. Now, some suggestions here is boxing in that first number on the bottom here, the ones place. From here, I'm going to multiply 4 times 3, 4 times 2, 4 times 5. So starting with 4 times 3, we know is 12. We carry the 1. 4 times 2 is 8 plus 1 is 9. 4 times 5 is 20. Now when we finish multiplying the 4 with the rest of the digits, we can cross that out, bring down the box, or you can put a 0. And then we jump to the tens place, which is the 5. From here, we multiply 5 times 3, which is 15. 5 times 2 is 10 plus 1 is 11. And then finally, 5 times 5 is 25 plus 1 more is 26. Now, these numbers that you have right here are called partial products. The numbers that we had started with, those are called the factors. Now the last part to this strategy is just to bring down the numbers by adding. So you have 2, here we have 14, carry the 1, that's 2, that's 8, and that's 2. So our final answer, which we call product, 28,242. That is one way to solve multi-digit whole numbers. On the other side, or below where you have space, I'm going to show you a second strategy called lattice. Sounds like lettuce, but it's pronounced lattice. Now, what I need to pay attention to is how many digits I have, and I start with the larger number, which is 523. So, to start this, you actually start with a rectangle. You write 5, 2, 3, 5, 2, and 3. And then your second factor, 54, on the right side. From there, we want to give each of those digits its own space. So the 5 has its space, or its own lane. And then these ones also on the right side that are going horizontal have their own. To avoid mistakes, we will put a dot in each intersection where the lines meet. This will help with the diagonal lines that we're going to draw next. So I start here between the 5 and the 4, and I connect the dots, and I can go outside just like that. So we're sliding to the left, so connect the dots, connect the dots, connect the dots. Now, this doesn't look like multiplication at all, but you'll see that we'll end up with the same product. So we're going to multiply, starting in the ones place, which is the 3, going down, the tens, and then the hundreds. So 3 times 5 is 15. 3 times 4 is 12. tens place now. 2 times 5 is 10. 2 times 4 is 8. We put 0, 8. And then finally in the hundreds we have 5 times 5 is 25. And 5 times 4 is 20. So those numbers that you have inside that red, in my red numbers, those are called the partial products, part of the answer. Now, like we did over here, we have to just slide down the numbers by adding. Here we're going to slide going to the left to get our answer. So to do this, I cover this up and I go down each slide one by one. So here, if I look carefully, I only have 2. So 2 slides out of the box. Here I have 5 plus 1 plus 8. When I add those together, that gives me 14. So I put the 4, but I carry the 1 to the next slide. Well, now I have 1 plus 1, that's 2. Go to the next slide. I have 5 plus 1 is 6, plus 2 is 8. And then over here by itself is just the 2. Now if I look, my answer is outside the box. 2, 8, 2, 4, 2. Which is exactly the same product as what we got from the first strategy. So we have strategy 1, strategy 2. And again, you get to pick which makes more sense to you. We'll be practicing these two a lot throughout the year. There's one last one that I do want to show, and it's called the box method. And some of you may remember it from 4th grade last year. It's easy. The only problem with that method is it takes a long time. But I just want to show to prove that it does work. So this last method, box method, is good, but it's going to take some time. So we have the number that we have is 54 times 523. Now before we get started in solving it, we actually have to break it by its value. So this one, we break it into its value. So it's kind of like what we had talked about earlier last week, I think early in last week, about expanded form, where we see that 4 is just worth 4. But the 5, is it worth 5 or 50?
5.
Well, 50. So it's worth 50. So we broke it apart in its values. Now the same thing here. We have 3 in the ones place. But the 2, is it worth 2 or 20? 20. And then the 5 is not worth 5, it's worth 500 because it's in the hundreds place. So we break it by its value. Now for this one, we have to actually make it a pretty large box. We're going to start with the one that has the most values, which is 500 plus 20 plus 3. Now on the right side, we're going to put 50 plus 4. Now again, these numbers want their own lane or their own space. Here we're going to multiply, kind of like we did over here, but you'll see that it takes a little longer. Here I'm going to multiply 500 times 50, then 20 times 50, and then 3 times 50. So I can even write it down like this. Bless you. And then here will be 500 times 4, 20 times 4, and 4 times 3. So then I solve inside of these boxes. Now there are some shortcuts that we'll be learning. So here I say 5 times 5 is 25. And then I have 1, 2, 3 zeros, so I can put those in my product. We haven't gotten there yet, but I'll show you how to do that. And I think next week we'll be talking more about that. Then 2 times 5 is 10, but then I have 2 zeros. 3 times 5 is 15, but there's 1 0 that I can carry over. 5 times 4 is 20, but then I have 2 more zeros. And then I have 2 times 4 is 8 with 1 0. And then 4 times 3 is 12. So all those numbers that I have in red are also our partial products, part of the answer. And the last step is to add them up. So I'm going to add up all the numbers that I have in red. I line them up correctly. So when I add these up, starting in the ones place, I have 2. Here I have 14. Carry the 1. That's 2. 5, 6, 7, 8. And then bring down the 2. And that's my product. And now you can see that strategy 1, strategy 2, and even strategy 3 have all the same product. So it doesn't matter which one makes sense to you, as long as you get to pick one that you can feel comfortable with to solve whole digit multiplication.